In Washington, government workers were told to go home. Many employees at the Central Intelligence Agency did not appreciate that order.
And when there's a crisis, an embassy's attacked or whatever, there's rioting, we go out and seek the crisis. We don't run away from it.
At the Air Traffic Control Command Center, the staff watched the amazing sight of every single aircraft over the United States landing at the nearest airfield, all following the command of Ben Sliney.
There were some 4,300 or so planes. They were all landed in 2 hours and 20 minutes, I think. I did not want to hear about another plane either heading towards something or being intercepted or, God forbid, crashing.
In the afternoon, the president landed at the Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska. Because of the communications problem on Air Force One, he was transported to an underground bunker there. Just before 3 p.m., Mr. Bush began a teleconference with the White House and the Pentagon.
As soon as he sat down, he said, "I'm returning to Washington." And we said, "No." Well, I think the vice president first said, "No, that's not a good idea." He said, "Look, I am returning to Washington. I've decided. Air Force One is out there getting refueled. When it's ready, I'm coming back. So you've got however long that takes to tell me what's going on."
Late in the day, when the president finally returned to Washington, he found out about the intelligence failure that led to 9/11, and he set the United States on a path to war. When the president arrived back at the White House on September 11th, he was told that the FBI had identified the names of 2 known al-Qaeda agents, Khalid al-Midhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, on the passenger list of the plane that hit the Pentagon.
Now, the president became aware that night that there had been a mistake involving CIA and FBI and their sharing of information. He had the same attitude that I did, which was outrage. I was flabbergasted. I couldn't imagine that the FBI knew the names of people in this country who were al-Qaeda. And yet these people were allowed to get on airplanes under those names, not using false identity. I was just mind-boggled. Why hadn't the FBI told the Transportation Department that they were looking for these people? Why weren't they on the do not board list? Well, on 9/11, that wasn't the day or the time to spend a lot of effort trying to answer that question.
That same afternoon, Ben Sliney discovered that FAA headquarters had issued a terrorist hijack alert 3 months earlier. He was shocked.
That hijack alert wasn't transmitted to air traffic control. That hijack alert was transmitted to airlines. And I say with dismay because I think we would have reacted, I believe in my heart we would have reacted so much quicker to that. You would have had 16,000 sets of ears and eyes and very inquisitive minds looking at everything that could possibly be suspicious with that type of information in our heads.
On the evening of September 11th, Richard Clark drove home through the deserted streets of Washington. He stopped and gazed at the smoldering Pentagon.
It's sort of the kind of hockey game where if the other team scores 1 goal, you've lost the game. And when they launched that attack on September 11th, we all felt that they had won, and we had lost.
I don't think anybody could have predicted that these people would take an airplane and slam it into the World Trade Center, take another one and slam it into the Pentagon, that they would try to use an airplane as a missile, a hijacked airplane as a missile.
One could not have not known about that. There were, known plans to us to fly a plane into the CIA. We certainly knew about other operations in other parts of the world involving flying a plane into a target. So it was on everybody's radar screen, and I don't accept the argument somehow this was couldn't have been imagined or something. It was very much something that people understood was a potential method of attack.
From the 1995 intelligence estimate, which predicted terrorists would use airplanes as weapons to attack U.S. landmarks, to the hijacking threats that were communicated to the president in August 2001, there were a lot of warnings on the path to 9/11. Many of them came through the counterterrorism chief at the White House.
Mr. Clark, could I ask you to raise your right hand so we place you under oath?
Richard Clark testified as the star witness before the 9/11 Commission in March 2004.
I do.
In a statement, Clark apologized to all the families who lost relatives on 9/11.
Your government failed you. Those entrusted with protecting you failed you. And I failed you. We tried hard, but that doesn't matter because we failed.
This is a failure of government right down the line. Whether it's the intelligence agencies, whether the immigration people, whether it's the FAA, whether it's, you name the agency. They all shared here in a culpability. There's nobody who worked for the United States government in that period who doesn't share some part of the responsibility.
Richard Clark quit his job as counterterrorism director in the Bush administration. At the end of his long war against al-Qaeda, he was left with an overwhelming feeling of guilt.
I think everybody involved in the counterterrorism effort prior to September 11th feels guilty that they didn't do more. Or if they don't feel that way, they ought to.